hearing the other music? What's going on, everybody? Welcome once again to JazzWatch. Yours truly, Greg Bryant over the microphone, your friendly neighborhood music crusader. Of course, here we discuss the musings of modern improvisational music, both classic as well as current, and we're so happy to have you listening to us once again here on the podcast. Of course, the ways to stay in touch with us: Twitter, GB JazzWatch, Facebook.com/JazzWatch if you want to know what we've got coming down the pike, what we've been working on. Join our page over there if you'd like to. And, of course, the old-fashioned email, gbjazzwatch@gmail.com, if you want to shoot the breeze, make a suggestion, or discuss anything that you've heard about here on the show. We'd love to hear from you. Thank each and every one of you for your feedback, man. We had, as I mentioned last episode, a great month last month, and this month is shaping up to be even better than that. We just keep growing, y'all, and I know it's because you keep telling people about the show. That's what it takes. Each one, teach one, as they used to say back in the day, but more so spreading the good news about good music. Man, we've had some dynamite guests, and today is no different. Multi-instrumentalist and master trumpeter Nicholas Payton is our guest for this edition of JazzWatch. It was great to get a chance to converse with him. A lot been going on in his world over the past few months. It seems like he's having a great 2015 with the BAM Festival, the Black American Music Festival that happened over in Italy. We get to touch on that a bit in this conversation. Also get to talk about his affinity for the city of New Orleans. Of course, he rose to prominence at a very young age internationally, but has always been based in that city. He tells us why in this very special chat. You'll also want to be on the lookout, hopefully later this year, for the release of Letters, a new double CD project that you can hear clips from at soundcloud.com/Nicholas Payton. There's some great stuff over there on that page, and we're going to play some sounds from that for you in just a moment. Of course, Nicholas operating most of the time in the trio context these days, but it's a very unique group, which we touch on that as well. Drummer Bill Stewart, bassist Vicente Archer, and Mr. Payton, of course, on trumpet, but handling piano, Fender Rhodes, and some Hammond organ duties on this forthcoming project. You'll hear it's a double CD following the success of this current project, Numbers. Nicholas sort of investigates some groove, mood, and vamp writing ideas that come to him. He just sort of jots down or captures in his voice recorder and instructs the gentleman in his ensemble on how to interpret them, or really actually lets them fall into their grooves. He's hired the right cats to be the right interpreters of his vision. And of course, he's had several gentlemen come through this particular group, noted cats such as Buster Williams and Lenny White among them. But this particular group is something else. I got a chance to catch a Smalls telecast a couple of weeks ago featuring these three gentlemen, Vicente Archer, Bill Stewart with Nicholas Payton, and the result was pure dynamite. They went every which way, and it was fantastic to behold. Let's listen to actually a sample of that before our conversation. We're going to hear a piece right now from the forthcoming Letters project. This one featuring Nicholas Payton on organ as well as trumpet, Bill Stewart at the drums, Vicente Archer on the bass, from the forthcoming project Letters. Music now, followed by our conversation with our guest for this edition of JazzWatch, multi-instrumentalist and trumpeter Nicholas Payton, with yours truly, Greg Bryant, the Watchman. Man, I remember I was in New Orleans maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. I remember walking into Snug Harbor, and one of the pictures I saw on the wall, there was a bassist, there was a drummer, and there was a guy sitting at the piano, and he had a trumpet in another hand. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. I wonder how that sounded. I looked closer, and it was you. And I was like, wow, man, that's a killer concept. And I remember maybe a year later, I was watching social media, and you posted this gig. I believe it was in Portland at a club called Jimmy Mac's, of you, Kareem Riggins, and Vicente Archer. And man, I was blown away at that time. And I really wanted to know, man, how did you get the idea to do the Triple X Trio, the format that you're working in these days?
Yeah, that was something I started doing at this gig. That's from that picture at Snug. After the flood, the city was kind of in a depressed state, and I started doing this late night set at Snug Harbor after they had their normal, 2 nights, two set shows. As a thing with the community, they took that little divider down, the wall down, so the club was open from the stage all the way to the door. And I told them I wanted people to be able to come for free, and I also wanted a place for musicians to come and hang after their gigs and socialize and jam and whatever else. And yeah, I just had this idea that I wanted to try to develop this thing where I played piano and trumpet at the same time, and that was the genesis of me doing that.
Man, that's awesome. I wonder, as I listen, man, to recordings such as that one, and then the official release that you put out, the Live at Bohemian Caverns, man, you're responsible for the melody as well as the harmony. Do you identify more now, say, with maybe organ players, since you have to keep it all in line at the same time?
I mean, on a certain level, technically, it's not conceptually different than a pianist who a vocalist who comp for themselves on piano, or comping for yourself with your left hand. When you're playing piano and you're solo in your right hand. So it's the only difference is I'm dealing with 2 keys and 2 different instruments. So that would be the difference between like organ or whatever else. I'm thinking in 2 keys essentially.
Wow, man, that's...
And obviously dealing with 2 different sonic textures and processes. But I play the piano with your hands and then you're breathing. So once you get past that thing, it's about making it more seamless. And the more I've done it, the more seamless it's become.
Right on. Man, 2 of your more recent partners in your band, I'd love to get your comments on them. The great bassist Vicente Archer, and then Bill Stewart. Man, you guys go every which way, man. It's killer. I got to see a recent date that you did at Smalls, and man, those guys were just... You guys were on fire. Talk a little bit about those guys, man, if you can.
Sure. Well, Vicente has been with me since 2002. So we've been playing for 13 years together. A real bass player, which is not as common as one would think. A lot of people own basses, but you find very few people who can take command of that role and really understand the function of that instrument and how it works, to really hear a great bass line, to really be supportive in that way is a rare thing. So he's out of the tradition of, the greats like Ron and James Jamerson and Ray Brown and all those guys who, when they played the bass, they emitted a certain energy within the music. And he's rare, particularly amongst guys in his age bracket and younger. You know, it's a thing you find less and less of. And because we've played so long, we've developed a lot of different ways to navigate through music, and it's hard to really talk about because it's become telepathic in a way. The way we've developed to move through form and how to create movement. In the tradition of like the things that Ron Carter and Herbie Hancock were doing on, say, like Live at the Plug Nickel with Miles Davis. That kind of thing where they'll just go in a direction and not really know where they are, almost relishing getting lost to be able to find their way back to one. And Bill has been playing with me for about a year and a half now, and he just jumped right in, like he had been playing with us forever. So this is definitely one of the best bands I've had, and some of the most enjoyable moments I've had playing music has been with these two musicians. And I marvel at how every time we come together, it's on another level.
Yeah. Man, it seems like you're having fun, and the music, man, is just joyous and goes through the different moods, man. And I'd almost want to be a fly on the wall for one of you guys' sound checks or something, man. How do you prepare them for like what you're going to do? Because you move between, you know, material that you've written to standards to sometimes free improv. Like, how do you ready them for that experience?
I think we bring the culmination of all our experiences to the table. And my job as a leader is to trust them and give them the freedom to be able to bring that. Be it the years Bill has played with guys like Maceo Parker or, you know, Vicente. When I met him, he was working with Donald Harris and you know, or just the experience in life, even outside of musicians, who they are. I want them to bring all of that to the table to make the music more dynamic. To me, the point of having brilliant musicians like them is to give them a platform for them to do what it is that they do. And, you know, just I sort of guide it away, but I don't try to control it, you know, because I want the music to be more dynamic. I don't want necessarily clones of all the instruments of me, you know, so I don't try to be, I'm not too heavy-handed in terms of what I say specifically. Like this new album we did, Letters, which is an extension of the ideas that I presented on my previous album, Numbers, where by which it's been about me trying to get all this music I've written over the years out to the public. I've been composing so much that a traditional label situation no longer worked for me, because the amount of output that I want to have to be able to put out as much material as I want when I want doesn't really work within the traditional label format. And that was one of the reasons why I started my own label. So I don't have to ask permission or make a sales pitch when I want to release an album. I can just release it when I feel like I want to release it. So with Numbers, you know, I've stopped writing music in a literal sense, you know, maybe 10 years ago. What I do now is when I have moments of compositional inspiration is recorded or use my voice memo to document, you know, a phrase or an idea, and I just log all of these ideas. So when I went into the Numbers session, I grouped these sets of 4 or 8 bar phrases together, often in sections of 3, and made a song out of it. With Letters, I didn't group them. So each song, the 26 songs, one for each letter of the alphabet, each one is one of those individual phrases. So sometimes a song may only be 2 bars or 4 bars or 3 bars or what have you. I didn't group them together as I did in numbers. Each one is this motivic idea.
Oh.
So there were very few times where I asked them to do, where I told Bill, hey, can you give me this type of groove or whatever. And even when I said that, it was after we tried something and I maybe wanted something a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So out of 26 songs, maybe twice I suggested something different.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I trust that what they do is going to be right for the situation. Mm-hmm. And because of my compositional process, that I don't actually write music. To me, the music comes to me. Mm-hmm. It could be that I'm sleeping and at 2 a.m. I hear something in my sleep and I walk over to the piano, record it in my voice memo, and I go back to sleep.
Wow. Yeah.
So the idea of sitting down at a piano and saying, like, let me write some music today, that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. These are all real moments of inspiration that come from life. Mm-hmm. So there's really nothing in the way of, I try not to get in the way of what that idea is. So when I present that idea to a like-minded musician, they already hear the groove. Mm-hmm. Because that sensibility is already encoded within the melody, already encoded within the chordal movement or the bass line or whatever. Mm-hmm. So if you got the right cats, they already know what to do for the most part. I don't really have to say much. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much our concept as a trio, that I have cats who just get it. Yeah. And we don't have to talk much about what it is.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. That's that freedom. That's that freedom. That's beautiful. Man, I'm looking forward to hearing Letters. I went over to, and I better tell folks now, soundcloud.com/Nicholas Payton. They can actually hear, I believe it's 5 of the tracks.
5, yeah. I posted a sample, 5 tracks.
From this Letters, which we're really excited about coming down the pike. I dug the tracks that you chose too to put up as samples. It's almost like, and I know you've written the Black American Symphony, but it's almost like a little microcosm of Black American music, the ones that you chose, the different feels and different flavors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I'm really digging that. And when do you think we may, is there any idea about when it may be released to the public, the complete project?
Hopefully this summer.
Awesome.
Hopefully this summer.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll keep on the lookout for that. Man, I wanted to ask you too, I know there was a recent festival over in Italy, actually dubbed the BAM Festival.
Yes.
And I don't know if that is the first. It's the first, to my knowledge, that's actually been named that way and organized that way, as opposed to a quote-unquote jazz festival. I'm just curious about how it went and your reflections on that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, I mean, every time I play, to me, it's a BAM festival. Mm-hmm. So on one end, that's that. Mm-hmm. But yes, this group of Italian dudes, Nicola Gaeta, and who wrote a book. Mm-hmm. After I presented my BAM concepts, he wrote a book about it. Fabio Morgera, trumpet player, played with groups like the Groove Collective for many years, and his promoter Giulio, Italian promoter. These guys got together and came to me and said, we want to, put on a festival in your honor. And, we did it. So, just, it meant a lot. I mean, it was not certainly without its hitches, being a huge undertaking and the first of its kind. But man, just to, if you've kept up with, a lot of the backlash I've had to deal with as a result of the things I've said and I've written, to have something like this come to fruition, and after the years of hard work I put into something, I was quite touched and moved for people to see the importance of what I did, to the degree to to make something like this happen. And it's only the first. I'm in talks with other people to put band festivals all over the world, and it's just the beginning.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Congratulations on that as well.
Thank you.
I wanted to know too your perspective on this. I really appreciate the fact that I see BAM as more of an inclusive thing.
Yes.
There's some people that may say, I guess, well, if we all call it that, meaning what's so-called jazz or so-called funk or so-called R&B or what have you, if it's all under the label, will there still be room for creative, say, improvisational music, not only to exist but to cohabitate with these other things? Would your answer be yes to that? How will we still create a space, I guess, for what it is that we do more as instrumentalists if everything is under one banner?
Well, to me, that's what it is anyway. And essentially, if that is acknowledged or not is another thing, which creates more of a problem to me. And it is inclusive of not only different genres or classifications, but it's also inclusive of people who are not black raced. I never said anywhere where, because it's black music, only black people can play it. It's just an acknowledgement of the roots and the history and the culture from which it comes, which is important. And I think jazz, calling the music jazz, allows a space for people to forget that, and it has been forgotten. It allows for appropriation, which it has been appropriated, and now you can have jazz that doesn't swing, that doesn't follow a code as far as ethnically from the black culture, and just the negative stereotypes that go along with jazz don't serve the music or the artists. So, in a nutshell, that's basically why I think it's important to more explicitly say what the music is. And to me, it's not a threat to acoustic music. It's not a threat to swinging or what have you. To me, jazz is more of a threat and has been more of a threat to that. If you look at jazz, most of the stuff that's heralded as the greatest jazz isn't swinging. It isn't inclusive of the blues. So from that perspective, all has already been lost. You have nothing to lose by calling it black music. Perhaps that will engender an atmosphere where more of the tradition and the roots of what the music actually is will have to be a part of it. See, that's my thing. With jazz, it doesn't have to be a part of it. You could disseminate and teach this stuff in school and never deal with the fact that black people created this music and why. That Charlie Parker was a black man. What was the ramifications of what he shared with the world in the 40s? They don't ever deal with that part of it because it's jazz. You don't have to deal with the uncomfortable parts of the narrative. But the uncomfortable parts of the narrative are the most important part. These people were playing for their lives. They were playing to... these were the first civil rights activists. People like Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong were breaking down racial, cultural barriers. They were the first people that made, the world have to acknowledge that black people are not slaves. We are human beings. And that's an important part of the history to remember, regardless of what the color of the instrumentalist playing the music.
Wow. Thanks for that wisdom, man. That's really important for all people to focus on. And one of the reasons that I do this show is to help in that the oral tradition to pass things along. I feel like that is another aspect that's being lost. And again, I appreciate you for zeroing in on the cultural relevance of what it is that all of us should be into. I wanted to ask you just about a couple of more people that you had the distinction of working with and maybe even being mentored by. One of them, I don't know if people there, you were actually the musical director for the Elvin Jones Jazz Machine. A little bit about maybe how that came about, how you met Elvin, and what that experience was like and has left with you.
Sure. Well, I was in my first semester of college at the University of New Orleans, and I was tight with Winton at the time, and Winton knew Elvin was looking for a trumpeter, and he put my name in the pot, and I got a call from Elvin and Keiko, his wife, and they invited me up to New York to do a week with them at the Blue Note Club, January of '92. So I went up, and of course I was thrilled and honored to have an opportunity to work with Elvin. And after the first night, he invited me to be a part of his group. And I stayed with him for 2 years. After the first year, the year end, he made me the musical director.
Wow.
So at which point he wanted to change his band and concept, and he asked me to recommend some guys. He was looking for a sax player, and he also wanted a flautist, and I got Greg Tardy and Kent Jordan in the group.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I know you spent some time with bass master Ray Brown as well. Could you tell us a little bit about him?
Sure. Just such a wealth of knowledge he had, not only about the bass or music, but just a very knowledgeable and cultural person. Such a command of his instruments, such a command of the music itself. A lot of people don't know that he started as a pianist, so he brought all of that information he had as a pianist to the bass, which is why he could get around on his instrument so well from a harmonic perspective. And as a leader, he created a lot of those intricate arrangements that he did, and I've seen him create arrangements like that on the spot. And there's not many people of any instrument who I know who have the ability to be able to do that and to hone in and to create something that sounds like you worked on it for weeks right in a moment.
Wow.
And he could telegraph so much in a couple of bars or in one note. When he played a bass line, or he played a bass note, or he dropped to the low E, he wasn't just playing a low E. You could hear all kinds of other notes in that.
Yeah.
Because he heard that when he played, so he wasn't just playing a line. Very, very important source of music, and every part of his life was like that.
Yeah.
Very, very, a lot of layers there than the one that might have been obvious on the top at the time.
Just two more questions for you today. The first one is kind of bringing it full circle. It was really touching to hear you talk about really beginning that trio concept in New Orleans at Snug Harbor. I really didn't know that story, that you had kind of instituted that policy and trying to get folks back into the community. I think it's unique that you've remained around New Orleans, using that as your base, to travel the world and go spread the music the way that you have, as opposed to moving to NYC. And are there any reflections you could give at why you decided to kind of stay at home and be a presence at home? Because a lot of cats feel like they need to move, eastward to kind of make an impact at all.
Sure. I thought about it early on. I wanted to move to New York to play with Art Blakey. After seeing the guys I looked up to, like not only Winton and Terrence Blanchard, but Lee Morgan, Freddie Hubbard. So many of my favorite trumpet players play with Art Blakey. My thing was, I want to go to New York and play with Art Blakey. In 1989, Blakey came down with the Messengers, and that was the first time I saw him. I saw him out at the festival at the fairgrounds, and late night there was going to be this sort of impromptu jam recording with Ellis Marcellus at Snug Harbor. So I was invited to be a part of the recording, and as it worked out, Art Blakey played on the tune, one of the tunes I was on. This tune Donald Harrison had just wrote for the date, Jitterbug. It's rhythm changes. And that was the first and only time that I would play with Blakey. So we played the tune, and man, I was flying just to be able to, you know, feel his press roll and all the things that cats talked about when they played with Blakey. To have felt that and been in that presence was just so overwhelming. So after we played the tune, you know, Blakey was sitting down, and you know, he said, "Hey, come talk to me for a minute." And he said, first thing, I was very shy, you know, I still am shy, but much more shy as a young man. He's like, first thing he said is, "Smile, are you from New Orleans?" And he started rapping to me. He was like, "Nicholas, I want you to come to New York, and I want you to be in the Messengers." And I tried to work it out after that, because I was 16 at the time. So I had worked it out with the new school that they were going to allow me to finish my senior year in New York and start school and have housing and all of this stuff. And unfortunately, he had passed right before I was getting ready to make that move. And after Blakey passed, I just kind of didn't want to live in New York. After that, it just lost its allure for me. It's not to say that they weren't great musicians there, but at that point, you know, the idea of actually living there just didn't appeal to me anymore, and I just remained home and had a strong presence in New York and worked there all the time, but I didn't really want to make that move.
Okay.
But to have at least had that one opportunity to play with Blakey and to have his blessing that he wanted me to be in the Messengers was certainly an honor.
Yeah, most definitely. And again, you know, the theme of legacy, you know, is important to me, and it's something that I've, you know, just really started to hone in on. How do you want to be remembered or acknowledged, man? When everything is said and done, what is it that you want folks to say about you?
That I'm sincere, that everything I said, everything that I played was from the heart, and in the spirit of recognition of the ancestors, and in the way of keeping, you know, Black history and culture and all the things that our people have gone through, to leave a legacy, you know, for those who come after.
Right on, man. It's been a real pleasure getting to talk to you this morning. I wish you the best, brother. Hope to stay in touch.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for reaching out.
Most definitely.
That's A, letter A from the forthcoming project, double CD project, Letters, from Nicholas Payton, right here on the show. So glad to be able to share his comments, and I appreciate him for taking the time out, as well as his representative, Anna Sala. I appreciate her for helping with the coordination of that. And we appreciate you for listening to us here on JazzWatch. We've got some great episodes coming down the pike, and want you to be sure that you stay in touch with us. Once again, the ways to do that are through Facebook, of course, Twitter, we're on there. And, of course, our mother site, which catalogs all of our archive, jazzwatch.wordpress.com. Make sure you go over there and check everything out, as well as synopsis of each individual episode. You'll be glad you did. I'm so glad that you did. Yours truly, Greg Bryant, over the microphone. We'll be back real soon. Make sure to let us hear from you. If you can go over and give us a rating or two over there at the iTunes, we'd really appreciate that as well. But most of all, spread this music. Spread great music to each other. So important. That's why we exist, and that's why you found us. We really appreciate your continued support, and we'll catch you again real soon. Yours truly, Greg Bryant, the Watchman, over the microphone. Take care.